Hey guys, my name's Bridget and today I'm going to be talking about Shatter. I didn't like it. When I was reading, I had a lot of feelings about what was happening. I tabbed a bunch of stuff. We're not going to talk about all of it, but I'm going to address a lot of points that I wanted to make when I was reading this book and how I was feeling about it. I'm going to put it down. I think you know what it looks like. We good. Before I start actually analyzing the book, I want to give a big disclaimer. I don't hate Taramaki, I don't hate Kate Simsies, and I don't hate anyone who's a big fan of her work. Read what you want. I personally didn't like the book and really want to express my opinions, and generally how I do that is making videos about the books I'm reading online. So here I am, about to make a review about Shatter. And it does happen to be a rant review. So strap yourselves in, grab some popcorn, and let's get into the book. I guess before I get into this review, I should probably give you a little summary about what the plot is. Basically, it's about this girl named Juliet, and if she touches someone, then they feel a lot of pain, and then they eventually die. And people want to use her as a weapon. She's originally locked up in this cell, and that's how the story starts. That's all I gotta say about it. It's quite the premise, but not a great execution. So let's get into the review. It's gonna have a lot of spoilers. I don't really think you should care, but also it seems like everyone and their mother has read this book already. So you can stay with me and talk about the book because you've already read it. It fell. It's fine. The main issue I had was the writing style. I went into this book expecting to love the writing style. Everyone on BookTube raves about how amazing Taharamaki's writing is and how beautiful and lyrical it is and everything. So I was like, oh, I'm in for a real treat. She's going to be a great writer. And I was so disappointed when I started reading and found her style to actually be a bit ridiculous. I understand that the similes and metaphors and repetition is supposed to show how she's kind of mentally insane. I got it, only from her doing it a few times. And yet she was constantly packing it in, as if I couldn't get it from the first few times she did it. Every other line, it seemed like, was another simile about something in the room. And I'm like, girl, I got it. You don't need to continually explain what his eyes look like. I get it. His eyes are nice. A term I found when I was making points for this review was purple prose. It's when someone's prose is too elaborate and causes it to break the flow of the writing, so you're really focused on how the person is writing rather than the actual story. I felt this book was an embodiment of purple prose. It's just all of it is purple prose. That's it. And it's trying so hard to be poetic and beautiful with the writing, but she takes it so far that it doesn't make any sense by the time it's on the page. And you're like, why is this part of the story? And it really gets in the way of what could be a potentially really interesting story. Page 5. I always wonder about raindrops. I wonder about how they're always falling down, tripping on their own feet, breaking their legs, and forgetting their parachutes as they tumble right out of the sky toward an uncertain end. It's like someone is emptying their pockets over the earth and doesn't seem to care where the contents fall, doesn't seem to care that the raindrops burst when they hit the ground, that they shatter when they fall to the floor, that people curse the days the drops dare to tap on their doors. I am a raindrop. I couldn't do that in one breath. This one sentence is 5 lines of text. Break it up, girl. You don't need it to be that long. And what she's saying here can be simplified to, it was raining out. Wow, was that so hard? The next page. I'm wearing dead cotton on my limbs and a blush of roses on my face. His eyes scan the silhouette of my structure and the slow motion makes my heart race. I catch the rose petals as they fall from my cheeks, as they float around the frame of my body, as they cover me in something that feels like the absence of courage. Something that feels like the absence of courage. So fear. You're afraid that he's looking at you. Why go through the whole extra sentence thing to compare your cheeks to rose petals as they float around you? Why? Some quality stuff here. My eyes break open, 2 shattered windows filling my mouth with glass. Y'all, why? Adam asks what to do with his clothes while he's in the shower, because naturally he doesn't know to take his clothes off to shower. And she says this beautiful line, I blink 1,000 times in the blackness. Seems like you're wasting a lot of time when you said you only have like 2 minutes in the shower, right? Page 20, you really get a whole page of her saying, I am not insane. That's all crossed out. Beautiful, right? We love repetition. I know this exchange is not meant to be funny, but every time I read it, I laugh. I'll explain after. And first, I'll just act out the scene a little bit. What's wrong? My parents stopped touching me when I was old enough to crawl. Teachers made me work alone so I wouldn't hurt the other children. I've never had a friend. I've never known the comfort of a mother's hug. I've never felt the tenderness of a father's kiss. I'm not insane. All of that is crossed out, of course. Nothing. Now, that's not meant to be funny because you're hearing about how traumatized she was as a child because she couldn't touch anyone, so everyone separated her. But all I think about when I read that is the meme.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they understand.
It's just so funny, in my opinion. I can't get over that. When I read that, I just automatically thought of the meme, and I was like, I can't take this seriously. He says it with a small smile the size of Jupiter. Jupiter is a huge planet, and it's way bigger than Earth, so I don't know why you would compare a small smile to one of the biggest planets in the galaxy. Just a thought. Every organ in my body falls to the ground. Why? Let me just read a few more quality lines so you can really understand the beautiful prose that this book has. There are 15,000 feelings of disbelief hole punched in my heart. There are 400 cotton balls caught in my windpipe. My mouth is sitting on my kneecaps. My jaw is dangling from my shoelace. My stomach drops onto my knees. So, you're shocked? I blush through my bones. I don't know what kind of bones you have, but I'd like to see that anatomy. He's wrong. He's so wrong, he's more wrong than an upside down rainbow. But everything he said is right. My spine is conducting enough electricity to power a city. Too much. And another one of my favorite lines. Hate looks like everybody else until it smiles. Until it spins around and lies with lips and teeth carved into semblance of something too passive to punch. I get personifying emotions and everything, but what does that even mean? There was also so much repetition in this book that it got extremely annoying. I get she's supposed to be insane, but me reading all this constant repetition is making me feel insane. And I don't want to feel insane while reading your book. I'm not marveling at the wonderful writing, I'm marveling at how you can't come up with another sentence. The strike-throughs I thought could be interesting, but they got old after seeing them about 10 times. They're used way too much at the beginning, they're used less at the end, which actually made the end better, but the constant use of them throughout the beginning was just awful. Show how she's feeling another way, other than just crossing it out. It was also really weird hearing the crossouts on the audiobook. If I was just listening to the audiobook and not actually reading it, I wouldn't have known what was crossed out because they'd read the line that's crossed out and then they'd add this little sound effect. Sometimes a bunch of lines are crossed out, so I wouldn't know unless I was actually looking at it, which I was. I had to listen to the audiobook while I was reading it. Otherwise, I would not have been able to keep in the story and finish it because I really needed to get through this book fast. I did like how the writing improved towards the end because there were less strike-throughs, there was less repetition, probably because she's interacting with other people, or just because Tejada Mafi wanted to make her book different from other books by starting out with all of that at the beginning. So people were like, oh, this is different and new. And then towards the end, it's like, it's not happening anymore. I feel like there are many more examples of the wonderful writing style, but I do not want to spend forever here talking with you about it because I have better things to do. So we're gonna move on to the world building. Now, you might be asking me, world building? Who is she? And I would say, I don't know her, because this book didn't have much of it. Most of the time is spent explaining how Juliet is so sad and upset about having her powers, and how traumatized she was by her past. There are a few lines where we kind of explain what's happening in the government and how it's called the reestablishment, and you kind of get the idea that it's basically every other dystopian government ever, but I would still like to see it fleshed out. The Hunger Games had such a fleshed out universe with the 12 districts and Pan Am. I would like to see a fleshed out universe, and it really didn't give me one. It was starting to do some more world building towards the end when we learned there's a whole group of rebels with superpowers, and she joins them, but I felt like that came way too late. It's like the last 10% of the book is like, okay, wait, here's some world building, because we forgot about that earlier on. Character development. Let's go through each of the characters. Juliet's basically just sitting there for most of the story. She's whining about being in captivity, talking about how she's gonna die. Yes, her situation is terrible. I'm not saying it's not. But there should be more to her character than constantly saying how upset she is about her powers and how sad she is about being in captivity. There has to be more to her than that. Also, at the beginning, Juliet kept getting mad at Adam for asking questions. And then immediately when she gets out, she asks like a billion questions. And on page 88, Warner barks out a laugh. So many questions. I just found that really funny because I thought she was so annoying at the beginning, being like, Adam, stop asking questions, and then she was the one asking questions. It was really ironic. I found her extremely annoying, and I personally, though I have nothing against the narrator, found the narrator's voice to be perfect to embody Juliet because her voice just perfectly encapsulated how annoying I found the character to be. I'm not saying anything bad against her. I wish her all the best. She's obviously doing a great job narrating these books, and they're really popular. Adam just kind of exists in this world. He helps her escape, but I can't really name any of his qualities. I think his two personality traits are protecting his brother and explaining to Juliet that he loves her so much, because he seemed like he was doing that every 5 seconds. Also, going into this book, I know everyone loves Warner and hates Adam, so reading this book was kind of pointless for me because I was like, he seems like a good guy here, but obviously he's gonna do something to screw it up and everyone's gonna hate him and love Warner, which brings me to Warner. Warner is a terrible person and I don't understand why everyone loves him. And while he says he wants the best for Juliet, he also says he wants to break her. So like, I don't see the connection to love. Like, he says he's in love with her, but also he wants to break her. Warner says, at least I'm honest about being a liar. Yep, some redeeming traits. This is a perfect quote to see how I feel about Warner. It's Juliet talking to him and telling him off when I was like, yes, tell him. Your soldiers beat me. You kept me here like a prisoner. You threatened me. You threatened to kill me. You give me no freedom and you say you care about me. You are a monster. Yeah, so that's a quality love interest. So basically here, Warner tells her that he wants her to torture people for him and that if she disobeys, then she'll be tortured and get her body parts taken apart. He turns to Adam and says, show her what she's missing, would you, blah, blah, blah. And then Warner says, that is an order, soldier. Warner's eyes are trained on me, his lips twitching with suppressed amusement. I'd like to break this one. She's a little too feisty for her own good. Yeah, we love abusive love interests. Also, I knew from the second he was introduced, I was like, that's Warner. Yep, I was right, sadly. There's also a point where he reminds her that the world hates her. And before that, there's a beautiful sense of repetition. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5 heartbeats. The world is disgusted by you, he says, his lips twitching with humor. Everyone you've ever known has hated you, run from you, abandoned you. Your own parents gave up on you and volunteered your existence to be given up to the authorities. They were so desperate to get rid of you, to make you someone else's problem, to convince themselves the abomination they raised was not in fact their child. Boy, you don't need to tell her she's a terrible person. She already thinks that every 5 seconds. So we don't need you reminding her and being like, yeah, you're a monster and the world hates you. Great. So yeah, that's the quality love interest that we have in this book, because I know everyone loves him. Henji also only seemed to be there for rough comedic relief. He arrived in like the last third of the book, and then he was just constantly there to be like, Juliet is hot, or yeah, that's his main purpose. The one thing I did like about his character was that Juliet stood up for him when he didn't like being called Moto because he didn't want his last name shortened from Kishimoto because he's Asian. And I think it's really important because people need to learn how to say someone's name instead of shortening it because, oh, it's too hard to learn. Like, you can learn, they learn your name, you gotta learn their name. Yeah, you might not be used to it because it might come from a different country, but you should still learn it because that's the right thing to do. So I thought that was a really good addition, and I thought it was really good that she added Kishimoto in and had that whole event happen with him because that was a really redeeming quality of the book. So the plot. Juliet has the power to touch people, make them feel pain, and then they eventually die. Sounds like a pretty interesting plot premise to start with. However, she does absolutely nothing with it. Towards the end of the story, there's the start of the idea that there's this other group that kind of seems like an X-Men-esque situation where they all have powers and everything, which was good. That was the part of the book I liked. I liked the end because we were getting kind of away from Juliet being crazy. We're learning about these superpowered people, which, as we all know, I'm a fan of. But that wasn't enough to redeem the book for me, like on any level. That was not a big enough part of the book for it to be like, oh yeah, that was great. Also, another fact that annoyed me is the fact that her power is never, ever, 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 ever explained. She constantly talks about it and talks about how, as a child, she was excluded because she had this power. Did she have it when she was born? I don't think so, because then she wouldn't have been able to be, like, birthed and everything. Like, held as a child. Like, she said she was never held as a child, but I feel like as an infant, she had to have been held at some point. They would have swaddled her or something. I don't know. Or if it came, like, a little later in life, like maybe when she was, like, 2 and it started happening. But we don't know when she got this power, so that's a confusing start. Either way, the method in which she got these powers is never explained. It's just like, yeah, she has these powers, and she's always had these powers. And we don't know why, but she does. Well, yes, I do think that explaining how she got these powers could be saved for another book, because maybe we're introduced to more people and they also have powers. But we're introduced to more people who have powers in this book, and they're in this whole camp where a bunch of people have powers, and it's kind of like an X-Men-esque thing, and I felt like at that point they should have explained how all these people got their powers, because obviously not everyone has powers, because it's a very rare thing to find, and they're all there together. But if all these different people have powers, there must have been a reason for them to get them. And yet, there's no, oh yeah, I got them because I was dropped in a vat of acid, or they were born with a mutation like an X-Men, or just anything. There's no reason. They just have powers, you know, casually. I just find it really hard to believe that she's introduced to more people with powers and then they don't take that as an opportunity to be like, yes, we have these powers because that would have really made more sense in the book, and it would have made the story make more sense with her powers and why she has them. And she's shocked that there's other people with powers as well, and yet there's still no explanation for it. If this is such a secret, this is something we should get to in the first book to give these characters their driving motivation and to make them more three-dimensional characters rather than just flat people who just exist. It would have added an interesting layer to the story and make the superpowers make sense in the world that they're building. Okay, so a big thing in the book is the romance. This book is really promoted as a romance because there's a big love triangle in it, you know? Those great love triangles, we know, I love them. Juliet and Adam meet and spend a few days together in a cell and then are automatically desperately in love with each other and ready to die for each other. The only reason they like each other is the fact that they're good looking. There's no other reason. I know people are going to come at me and be like, oh, well, they really liked each other from when they were kids. But really? They saw each other from afar, going through some hard times with their family and the fact that people distanced themselves from Juliet, but never talked to each other. And you expect me to believe that now that they've met up for a few days in their cell, many years later, but suddenly they know each other's spirits and are automatically in love. I don't think that's enough time to build this ride or die relationship days after they meet again. So it's really insta-love, which is not a great way of forming a love connection in books. Also, surprise! Warner can touch her as well! Wow! I never saw that one coming, her two love interests being able to be the only people who can touch her. Shock! Never could have predicted that one. I am so surprised. There's another thing that they do in this book, and it's the fact that Juliet is so gorgeous, but she doesn't know it because she's been locked up and she hasn't seen her reflection in many years because she doesn't like looking at herself. And every guy she meets is constantly in love with her and saying how beautiful she is. Adam, Warner, Kenji, aka the only three guy characters we meet that say anything of meaning in the story. I don't think we really meet anyone who says anything else. And while she's locked up, everyone apparently was out there looking for her and trying to find out where she was because they all wanted to use her because she's so special and she's gonna save the world and everyone needs her on their team. So I gave the book a 2 out of 5 stars. I can see why other people liked it. It's a quick read, and if you can get past the writing, or as some people think the writing is extremely good and just kind of ignore that the similes and metaphors are really overused, then I'm sure you could attach yourselves to these somewhat formed characters and enjoy the story. It's a fun premise, so you can go into it and not super analyze it and just be like, yeah, it's fun to read. Just in my opinion, there were so many overused metaphors and similes, and she was just attempting to do poetic writing so hard that it failed so hard because of that. I'm unlikely to continue this story, but I do own books 2 and 3, so if you guys really like this video and want me to do a review for the second book, then I would be down to do that. Otherwise, it's going to be a no from me for continuing this series. If you like hearing me rant about books, please subscribe to my channel where I express my opinions about many different books frequently. Give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Every like is another crossed out metaphor. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be up very soon, so see you guys then. Okay, bye!